the last 5 months, I've been thinking that it is a huge mistake that you left Steve.
The thing I really like about Sex and the City is you can watch it a million times, and depending on what chapter of your life you're in, you're gonna see it entirely differently. But I am ashamed to say how many times I watched this show before I realized that I was brainwashed not only into liking and rooting for Steve, but into thinking Miranda was the problem. Meanwhile, my poor sis was a victim.
You're a victim.
I mean, look here, I was threatening to beat Miranda ass when she left Steve in the reboot. And that's even with me Cynthia and her partner Christine the long way in real life. Here's a bad picture of me and Cynthia last year when we spoke at then Congressman Jamal Bowman's campaign event. And yes, I am flexing on you 1,000%. That's what's happening. All of us women rooting for Steve isn't just the epitome of internalized misogyny, but it's the deliberate result of the showrunners who damn near beat us over the head that Miranda was the problem and she should be grateful to be with a bum ass she met at the bar. While us loving Steve as an audience is owed in no small part to David Eigenberg's performance, because he did a damn good job making Steve feel so lovable, earnest, warm, and trustworthy, that we fail to realize that Steve is a piece of shit who does Miranda dirty in just about every chapter of their lives and constantly puts her femininity on trial if she doesn't prioritize his wants over hers. But it's not without the writers having not just Steve, but all of Miranda's friends chastise and dismiss her feelings no matter what Steve did. Because the truth is, the show went out of its way to communicate to us that Miranda's insecurities, that she wasn't attractive or feminine or desirable enough for a man of her dreams, were not just insecurities she needed to overcome. They were somehow facts that she needed to surrender to. Anytime Miranda battled with insecurity, her friends affirmed it. I'm thinking about the time those hoes sat in front of her talking about how if they were gonna have a threesome, they'd all each other, but not Miranda, like my bitch's chopped liver just sitting there. I'm thinking about the time Samantha shamed her because she hadn't shaved, and when she rightfully retorted that she's a busy working mother and hadn't had a chance, Samantha then puts her down further by comparing her, a corporate attorney, caretaker to Steve's sick mother, and parent to both her son and her husband, to Charlotte, a glorified housewife that married into money twice and sees how she's perceived by men as being her entire identity. And when Miranda gets upset because she's in the middle of a divorce from her cheating husband, these trifling ass bitches quite literally did not bat an eye, not a shred of compassion for her.
So what? It's my fault? I let the sex go out of my marriage? I deserve what I got? Thanks for understanding.
Honey, I'm sorry. That's not what I'm
fine.
Whenever Miranda decided she wanted better for herself, or not always even better, but just something simply different for herself, different choices than they would have made, she was made to feel selfish, ungrateful, uncompromising, negative, or some other stupid shit these silly hoes came up with. I'm thinking of the time Charlotte bullied her into having Steve's baby that she didn't want simply because Charlotte wanted to have a baby and was struggling to conceive. I'm thinking of the time Carrie's bitch ass yelled and shamed Miranda for leaving Steve because he cheated on her. Don't worry, we're gonna get back to all of this. I say all that to say, Miranda did not just deserve better than Steve. She deserved better friends who thought highly of her and thought that she deserved better. Instead, she got people desperate to affirm every negative thing the world convinced her to believe in herself, which is why, quiet as kept, I don't have too much of a problem with how Miranda's moving in the reboot. She'll be what you make gun. I obviously don't like the Che character, but I think that the choices Miranda starts making in the reboot make a lot of sense when you think about it. People tend to think of Miranda as a strong, no-nonsense, confident kind of character, so they see the reboot as a kind of character assassination. But I never saw Miranda that way. Miranda's an attorney. She is intelligent, and the way she speaks sounds very assertive and matter of fact. But Miranda as a woman was swimming in insecurity, self-doubt, and feelings of inadequacy. So much so that things like ticking single on a mortgage application or not having a date to a work function or a wedding would bring her to her knees. Miranda was a woman whose femininity was always on trial, and she was truly bothered by that, which I think is part of the reason why anytime being a lesbian came up, she bristled at this. Not just when her own boss thought she was a lesbian, but even when Samantha dated women or Charlotte started hanging out with lesbians. And it's also why when Steve questioned her femininity, when she tried to set boundaries and create distance between them, she felt compelled to prove her womanhood to him and invest deeper into a relationship she never thought was right for her. So it makes sense to me that a woman who spent her 20s and and 30s and 40s, never exploring her own sexuality or desires because she was busy being forced to bend the knee to both societal and peer pressure to settle for whatever man wanted her, have his children and move to a borough she didn't like, perform sex and labor for him, or his cheating is her fault, might start to have a personal and sexual awakening in her 50s and decide that she's living for her, that she's now trip up over a non-binary person that's getting her rocks off, and that she's no longer gonna prioritize the piece of shit husband she was muscled into settling for, and the unfortunately piece of shit son she was also muscled into having. Quiet as kept. It makes sense. And even though people can't stomach seeing Che make a fool out of Miranda, me either, child, me either. And people are mad because they think Miranda's moving very Carrie-like, it still makes perfect sense to me. Miranda is Carrie's best friend. That is who she is closest to in the group. I'm not sure we've ever seen Miranda and Charlotte hang out alone, and I know for a fact the only time Samantha and Miranda ever had any solo scenes was when Samantha decided to come babysit Brady so Miranda could take her hair appointment. And she only even did that because she hadn't been acknowledging Miranda's existence since she had Brady and she got called out for it. My point is this. Yes, Miranda might have called Carrie on all her bullshit with Big, but that never meant that she wasn't capable of it herself. She just hadn't felt about any of the men she was with like Carrie felt about Big. Likely because she didn't really like men for real, but that wasn't something she ever got a chance to truly explore. And now that she's in the era of her life where she's aware of her own sexuality and desires, my girl is dickmatized, for lack of a better word, and getting played just like we all have. So let's give Miranda some grace, seeing as no one ever has. So, without further ado, here is why Miranda deserved better. An Illuminati pop production. Roll the theme song, Erin!
Black independent, strongest in women. It's Olay, it's Olay, it's Olay, it's Olay now. I know that I'm worth it, so make sure to listen. It's Olay, it's Olay, it's Olay, it's Olay.
Steve and Miranda meet after Carrie stands her up so she could be creased up under Big, and Steve was the bartender at the bar air hustling while Miranda was on the phone.
I'll have another glass of wine.
Please.
Please what?
I'll have another glass of wine, please.
Are you allowed to talk to me like that?
Yeah, I think I am. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Steve. Thank you, Steve.
Look, that's really very cute, but I'm not really in the mood.
Not really in the mood, Steve.
I'm not a total bitch. I just had a fight with somebody.
Yeah, I heard. Boyfriend?
That's none of your business.
Girlfriend? Butcher.
Butcher?
The veal. I took a shot.
Now, because when we first see Steve, he's the cute bartender behind the bar flirting with Miranda and they have chemistry, I didn't initially take serious note of the fact that how Steve chooses to flirt with Miranda and to ultimately get himself into her bed is to give her shit, to critique how she is and communicates as a person. And sure, it's small and it reads cute and harmless in this particular moment, but it's something that Steve will continue to do the rest of his and Miranda's life together to urge her to operate how he wants by making her feel like there's something wrong with her because she's not into something he is or responding the way he wants her to. In that first encounter, sure, he's being cutesy when he does it. He's being cutesy. But when Miranda doesn't first bite on his probing and advances towards her, he takes a little dig at her femininity by suggesting maybe she has a girlfriend. And sure, it's cute and flirty there, but we'll circle back to how that shows up later when Miranda dare not jump at Steve's suggestion that he move into her apartment when they've only been dating a short while and she's already having to take care of him, clean up after him, and struggling at work as a result. And even though the audience falls in love with Steve the moment he's introduced in the bar, it's important to note that Miranda does not. She is not interested in this man. She takes him home from the bar and they have what Miranda intends to be a one-night stand, and she makes it clear the moment Steve suggests they exchange phone numbers and see each other again. And what follows that is another example of how we overlook Steve's boundary crossing, persistence, and red flaggish behavior because we like him. Because if we didn't like him, do you know how alarming and weird we would find it if we had a one-night stand, told the guy that's all it is, we neither want to go out with him, see him again, or so much as exchange numbers, and he took it upon himself to return to our home in New York City. So this is a commute, to commute to our home uninvited the following day. Steve shows up to her building, buzzes Miranda's unit on the intercom. She asks him what the he wants, and the only reason he gets buzzed up is because instead of answering her question, he tells her, do you really want the neighbors hearing what I have to say? So she buzzes him in, and now they're face to face for Steve to announce to Miranda that he likes her, wants her number, and to take her to dinner. as though she hadn't already explicitly declined both of those requests the night prior. So again, she tells Steve no, and he keeps insisting that they go to dinner, and Miranda says no again, and she also adds that she has plans, which he at first doesn't believe before insisting she reveal her plans to him. When Miranda reluctantly reveals that she has dinner plans with her girls, he then invites himself to her private outing with her friends. And again, I want to point out how weird and scary this would be if we dumb bitches didn't find Steve cute and charming and shit. When Steve is at Miranda's dinner with the girls, Miranda is paying him dust. So when he brings over drinks for the table, he says to them something along the lines of, if you want good service, get a bartender. So Miranda responds with something like, yeah, and if you want a good go home with one. And tell me why you could have had a record scratch. Tell me why the entire table looked at my girl like Carrie looked at Samantha. That time she caught her giving head to the delivery man in the office. Lord, granted. Was Miranda wilding a little bit? Yes. But I have 2 points. First, them bitches of all bitches ain't had no right to look at her like that. Because that's not as wild as a whole lot of shit I've heard coming to their mouths in public in the company of Samantha. And it ain't half as disrespectful as some of the unnecessary things I've seen them do to genuinely nice guys. Again, Samantha, justice for that Smith. But secondly, and more importantly, from Miranda's perspective, this was supposed to be a one-night stand. She's now firmly and repeatedly rejected this man multiple times, and he's now shown up at her home uninvited and bogarted his way into her girls' night. She's trying to get rid of this. Yes, she's a little bit rude and wildin' because she's trying to get rid of this. It does not matter how cute or nice we find Steve. That does not obligate Miranda to return his advances, and he is outright violating the boundaries she keeps trying to set. So after Miranda says this, here comes the second time since meeting Miranda that Steve, the man relentlessly pursuing her when she's rejected him, is going to outright suggest she hates men or has issues with men simply because she didn't want anything with him beyond the one-night stand.
Why do you hate guys so much?
Excuse me?
We just met, so I know that ain't all about me.
Then shortly after that, Big blows their minds by for once simply honoring his plans with Carrie and showing up. Lord, listen, the ball was in hell for Carrie and Big, okay? They are so shocked by that shock combined with Steve's tireless efforts to convince Miranda she's defective for not being interested in him, she decides to run behind this man in the rain, and they kiss and begin dating. And from the moment they start dating, Miranda becomes this man's mother, because the rarely discussed fact in the Sex and the City fandom is that Steve is a bum, a childish bum at that. Steve spends his time laying on Miranda's couch, eating up Miranda food. Steve can't even be bothered to wipe his own ass, to the point where Miranda gotta wash his shitty drawers. And he's not just a bum. Steve does not make up for what he lacks in money with emotional intelligence or support or any of that shit. Steve doesn't respect Miranda's career or shit she's got going on. Miranda is a corporate lawyer at a big law firm, which if you're not a lawyer, that may not mean much to you. But as a lawyer, let me tell you what that means. That means my bitch is working slave hours, okay? They are paying her handsomely, yes, but they working her like a dog, okay? A dog. And she working even more on top of that because she's trying to make partner. So while she busy working like that, she's not only in a relationship with a man-child she has to take care of, but he had the nerve to curse her clean the out because she was working and needed to work at the time when he wanted her to watch him, a leprechaun-sized man, do a dunk contest that his stupid ass was convinced he'd win and get some money.
I ask you to do one thing, one time for me, and you can't do. What the fuck is that?
What the fuck is with the attitude?
You know how many law things I've been to? How many times I do what you want?
Dad, it's just a stupid half-court shot.
Not to me, it's not.
Steve, come on.
It's not just the shot, it's everything. We can't move in together. This isn't gonna work. If this is ever gonna work, I need you to believe in us a little more.
First of all, let me tell y'all, God would have had to come collect Steve if he threw a basketball at the white wall in my house.
Hey! That's Ralph Lauren paint.
But second of all, what the is this talking about, and who the is he talking to? Because he cannot be talking to the Miranda that literally does everything for him. Meanwhile, he doesn't even do it a courtesy of letting her get some rest for work, run her errands on the weekend, work when she needs to, or maintain her schedule. Miranda can't even express these things to him without this accusing her of being neurotic. Steve fundamentally does not respect anything Miranda got going on because he has it in his head that he's doing the world for her by being with her, because he thinks that as a woman, she should be grateful to have him and that he should be her entire world. That's why I don't care about how it disrupts anything else in her world. That's what's going on. But because Steve isn't smug and outright sleazy like Big, we don't notice it. But here is the gag, okay? After doing all that running behind Miranda, muscling her into believing something gotta be wrong with her to not want to be with him, he successfully convinces her to be with him. And Miranda then bends over backwards to be with Steve. And it was all good until she asked the man who would one day have a aneurysm if she doesn't watch him unsuccessfully try to dunk a ball in a basket to be her date to her work party. Lord, remember I told y'all, Steve ain't got no money, but he needs a suit to accompany him to Miranda's work event. So Miranda and he go shopping for one. He was going to wear this mustard colored corduroy suit to the party. Okay, they pick out a nice suit that Steve can't afford, which isn't a problem because Miranda wanted to buy the suit for Steve. But Steve, the same been a broke bartender since the day they met, who'd been happily freeloading off his rich lawyer girlfriend he begged to be with for weeks without shame, starts carrying on like it's all of a sudden an affront to his masculinity for Miranda to buy the suit. So he snaps at her before giving them 605 credit cards to split the cost of the suit amongst, only to then show up to Miranda's house moments before the important work party he promised to accompany her to, not only suitless, but to break up with her for making more money than him. Talking about, you need someone that's more on your level. This Miranda sobbing in her doorway before she has to go to this work party. I find that Miranda's career is disregarded by both her friends and Steve, so really the writers, so much that the fans don't incorporate it into how they view Miranda's life, particularly her life with Steve. Miranda did not even want to date this man. She thought she could do better than him, and she reiterated this several times, and she was shamed by both Steve and her friends into believing something was wrong or foolish about her not reciprocating his feelings, only to end up with a man who made her life more difficult, expected her to do all the sacrificing and accommodating and caretaking, and then the moment she tried to lean on him, he pulled the rug right out from under her because he suddenly now believes she needs someone more on her level, which she knew in the first place. Ain't that about a bitch? So now, not only has he broken her heart, affirmed her worst fears and insecurities, he has now left her to navigate her workspace, not just freshly heartbroken, but with the added embarrassment of knowing she hasn't even been on her A game at work because she was trying to accommodate and sacrifice for her relationship that just blew up in her face. And we know that Miranda has trauma around being solo at these work parties because of how the partners perceive her. It's a whole thing in season 1 when she's accidentally set up with a woman by one of her colleagues who mistakenly assumed she was gay. But Miranda sees being partnered as so essential to her success at the firm that she pretends to be gay and go out with the woman she was set up with. Now, fast forward to her thinking she finally had her own true partner to take, only for him to abandon her. That there should have been all the reason Miranda ever needed to never speak to Steve, even if he were the last on earth. Which is why it's so crazy and audacious that down the line, when Miranda almost runs into Steve, she rightfully tries to duck this because why on earth would she want to see him? And would y'all believe this ass Steve sees her duck him, then shows up unannounced to her house to tell her, the woman he ducked the last time he was there, that it was a very shitty thing for her to do by trying to avoid him in the street. I know you lying. Who is this talking to? Steve sat up in Miranda's face and gaslit her so bad, he had her crying and apologizing for being a shitty person for not wanting to see a broke her heart. And listen, y'all don't want to hear this, but Steve Brady does Carrie Bradshaw type shit. Yes, I said it. Boo your mom. Steve showing up at Miranda's doorstep to gaslight her for not being excited to run into the bartender who convinced her to be late to work, to wash his shitty drawers, and to house and feed him before dumping her and never looking back is high-key Carrie Bradshaw behavior. Was it not Carrie who blew up her relationship with Aiden, yet somehow couldn't believe he didn't roll out the red carpet when he saw her at his bar, and then took her silly ass to his doorstep to play crazy like she don't have the faintest clue why Aiden's perfectly entitled to not be on her run? Steve does Carrie shit. And they both think they real cute and charming when they do it. The difference is, we don't think Carrie's bullshit is cute, but we think Steve is. And that's precisely why all our stupid asses happily let Steve gaslight Miranda right back into a relationship with him. And this time around, Steve has more nerve than ever before. See, the first time around, Steve was de facto living in Miranda's place, having Miranda take care of him, not giving a flying fuck about Miranda's work schedule or anything else she cared about. But this time around, he's doing all that, but now he's really trying to push the envelope. Because now, he's not just de facto living in a house, taking over her space, having both she and her new judgy ass maid cleaning up after him and ignoring any attempt she makes to set boundaries. This time, when she tells him something as small as get your hand off the pillow I slumber on and please pick up all your shit off my floor, what this needy somehow hears is,
Actually, I'd like to move in.
oh my god, yes, oh god, because shit is terrifying. This man said, I'd like to move in. He just up and decided he ready to live in her house. And of course he is. Steve's apartment is one step up from living in the sewage system. Meanwhile, Miranda owned big Manhattan apartment and she have a maid. That's a homosexual's dream. And ain't it something? When Miranda wanted Steve to let her buy him a suit so he could support her at her work event, his masculinity couldn't allow it. But now all of a sudden, his masculinity has no problem with him living in a house rent-free. I don't think I ever seen Steve so much as bringing in groceries or cooking some dinner in there. So this says to her, I'd like to move in. And immediately, here go Carrie stupid bitch Bradshaw narrating, talking about most single women dream of this moment. Bitch, shut up. Shut up. I telling you earlier, the Sex in the City messaging is so anti-woman. Do you think most single women dream of hearing that a broke nigga trying to force his way into their crib just seconds after trying to communicate to said broke they want more space? Carrie need her ass beat, I swear to God. So Miranda reasonably says, we just got back together. There's no need to rush things. We're not ready. We already are spending all of our time together. You are always here and I would like some space. And just like a childish, manipulative ass, not an adult in a healthy relationship where people communicate their needs, Steve leaps to his feet, starts getting dressed to leave angry and says, fine, I'll give you your keys back. This woman ain't said nothing to him about wanting no keys or telling him to leave, but it's manipulation because the manipulation is to make it an all or nothing situation. Miranda has given him a key to be there because that's what she's comfortable with. But because she's not comfortable with him wholesale moving in like he wants to do, he decides he's gonna leave and give back the key and not be there at all because he wants to punish her. Give me everything I want or get none of what you want. That's what Steve is playing at. So Miranda says, no, keep the key. I want you to have the key. She's just trying to communicate to the man she wants a little space and they're not ready to move in together yet. And this Steve ignores absolutely every logical word out of her mouth to say, Jesus, Miranda, it's like you're the guy sometimes. Remember, I told y'all about Steve. It seemed cute and innocent when he did it in their first few encounters, but playing on Miranda's insecurities that she doesn't measure up to a sexist world's gendered expectations of her as a woman is something Steve does to her for the rest of their lives together. Steve truly has some nerve because here's what I find crazy about Steve's misogyny and consistent misogynistic attacks on Miranda's womanhood and femininity to get what he wants. Steve loves to invoke gender roles only when it hurts Miranda. And he always conveniently fails to acknowledge how he doesn't meet the requirements of the patriarchy that he loves weaponizing against Miranda. Unless, of course, it'll hurt Miranda, which is why the one and only time Steve ever acknowledges how he doesn't measure up to what his beloved patriarchy says a man is supposed to be or do in a relationship is when it gave him an out to dump her before he'd have to let her shine while he'd be her supportive partner at the work party. Think about it. Because Miranda dare not jump at his request to move in when Steve believes that as a woman, she should be pressed for a man in her space, offering her whatever looks like a serious commitment. He suggests it's unwomanly of her to want space from him and to not want to move in together. But he never dings his own masculinity or suggests that he's behaving womanly by wanting to be all up under Miranda and to move into her place and rush the relationship along. Steve loves to invoke the patriarchy only when it's time to leave Miranda high and dry or to force her to do what he wants. And it works. It fucking works. Remember earlier when I said I cannot think of a time Steve even made himself useful around the crib, brought some groceries, cooked some din-din? But you know who I have seen try to do all that for him? Miranda. In fact, in the very same episode where he calls her the man in the relationship because she doesn't want to move in together seconds after getting back together after he last dumped her out the blue because she was more successful than him, which is still a fact that has not changed. After Steve makes her question her womanhood, Miranda, the already overworked lawyer struggling to juggle her professional and personal life, feels compelled to try to buy groceries and cook with time and energy she didn't have, only for the groceries to fall and break, causing my poor sister damn near have a nervous breakdown from the feelings of inadequacy that Steve has yet again tapped into in order to get his way. And yet again, Steve successfully bullies his way into advancing his relationship with Miranda to a step she has explicitly told him they are not ready for. And the problem is, Steve is a nigga that you cannot give an inch. Because if you give Steve an inch, he could take 5 miles and join a marathon, because just 4 episodes after bullying Miranda into letting him move in, as Miranda is becoming increasingly fed up with having to take care of him and clean up after him, all while he can't even be bothered to so much as turn the TV down while she tries to work, this man has the nerve to decide they should have a baby. A baby!
This nigga's crazy.
Dog, we really did not peep the way this Steve was trying to lock Miranda down, okay? If the roles were reversed and Steve was the gal and Miranda was the man, we'd have called Steve every kind of gold digger who brings nothing to the table and is obviously trying to trap his more successful partner. But we couldn't see it on Steve because sexism. Well, we couldn't see it, okay? Some people was woke. Y'all need to go watch my girl Aspen J's YouTube channel. She was very woke to all of Steve's shit, and all of her Sex and the City content is phenomenal. Honestly, all her content in general. I love her Degrassi videos. Check out the whole thing. Leave some comments. Tell I sent you. But we couldn't see it on Steve because sexism tells us Miranda should be so happy to have a man who loves her, because even that's open to debate. But we couldn't see it on Steve because sexism tells us that Miranda should be so happy to have a man who loves her and wants to be with her. Even if that man has nothing in common with her, doesn't take any interest in nor respect her career, her sacrifices, her home, her boundaries, or her feelings. But he's cute. He her. He says he likes her and he smiles, so he's the prize, I guess.
It's an evil world we live in.
And just like Steve wasn't trying to hear reason when Miranda cautioned him that they weren't ready and he was moving too fast when he initially brought up the idea of them moving in together, he still ain't trying to hear it when he starts trying to convince her to have a baby. And you know what I find funny? Steve and Miranda are in a Chinese restaurant eating when Steve brings up that they should have a baby. And as he's trying to convince Miranda having a baby is a good idea, he doesn't even appear to notice that Miranda is vigorously cleaning up his shirt that he's presumably spilled his meal on like a child who spits up. Because for Miranda, he is already a baby she has to mother, which the show goes out of its way to illustrate repeatedly. Later in the same episode, he's eating cereal from a big bowl, watching Scooby-Doo loudly and laughing even louder as he ignores a stressed out Miranda begging him to turn on the TV while she tries to work. He's actually worse than ignoring her, because as she begs this lousy ass man-child to turn the TV down so she could work, this tells her that she has to get used to it, to being loud if they're gonna have a baby. But what's funny to me about how many examples the show goes out of its way to provide us of Miranda having to mother Steve is that despite the fact that the show is deliberately showing us this dynamic, that Miranda is forced to mother this big ass man-child who ignores her needs and shames her as a woman for having them, and they show us how much Miranda hates it and how it negatively impacts her life, the show is still so sexist that it's not on Miranda's side at any point, even though it's showing this to us. The show constantly makes it clear that we are supposed to think that Miranda is wrong not to ignore all of this to be with Steve. So Steve insists they should have a baby, and he tops it off with,
We wouldn't have to get married.
That's suspicious. That's weird.
What might Steve the Brokey have to gain by getting Miranda to have a baby for him but not marrying her? Look, yo, we don't talk enough about how men try to trap women with babies, child. Anyway, Steve tells Miranda it's the perfect time for them to have a baby, and she says, no, it's not. They've been living together and back together for all of 2 months, and she's trying to make partner at her firm so they can't have a baby. And just like the child Steve is, he responds, come on, I want to have a baby. It'd be fun. Steve needs his ass beat,
Child. Anyway, so
I really cannot stand this Steve, because when Miranda rightfully responds, a baby is not a boy to play with, it's work, this goofy goober goes, oh, well, I'll watch Sesame Street with the baby during the day while you're working, I'll go bartend at night. Forcing Miranda to have to issue yet another wake-up call that this plan of his would mean that she would be up all night with the baby and thus unable to work the 14-hour days at her firm she needs to work in order to afford the home he won't be lay up in watching Sesame Street. And would y'all believe this good-for-nothing man fixed his mouth to reply, let's hope the baby inherits my positive attitude. Because again, every time Miranda uses her common sense and tries to point out responsibilities that will fall on her shoulder, he makes her think there's something wrong with her. So later on in that same episode, after continuing to ignore Miranda's bare minimum request that he keep it down while she tries to work, he decides that because she not biting on the whole baby thing, he gotta find something else to upend her life with. It wasn't enough to disrupt her work while she tried to work from home. He then decides to not just call her at work while she busy. He demands she drop what she doing and meet him somewhere in 30 minutes, even after she's already told him she can't. She is busy and she has a meeting, and he knows she's working her ass off trying to make partner. But it doesn't matter to Steve. He needs her to meet him. And where, you ask? Where is so important that she needs to drop everything she doing to meet him at? A pet store. Steve needed this woman to leave work in the middle of the day just so he could ambush her to buy him a dog only he wants. Miranda has repeatedly told him that she wants and needs space, to stop rushing the relationship, that she has too much responsibility on her plate that he doesn't help her alleviate as it is. And she already has a cat. And this decides that what she needs, what they need, is the stress of a dog. Do you know how much work a dog is? A new puppy at that? And it's extra work to acclimate said new puppy to her existing cat. This Steve talking about the dog will be a trial run for raising a baby. As though Miranda doesn't have an existing pet in their home that he doesn't do shit to care for. And y'all just know that he made her pay for that dog. Which is funny to me. How this broke ass decide to at least adopt, don't shop. No, he want Miranda to buy him the little boutique puppy of his dreams. Dog, I can't believe I used to love this Steve, dog. I used to stan Steve. And as always, Miranda gives in and gets the dog after Steve promises he'll take care of it. But does he? No. No the at all, causing Miranda to finally snap and break up with him. And again, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that Steve's fragile masculinity, Brady's masculinity, somehow wasn't fragile enough to stop him from staying on Miranda's couch post-breakup for who knows how long while he tried to find a rat's nest he could afford to live in. And as bad as it is that poor Miranda feels so guilty for dumping this Jones that she had every right to dump, that she lets him stay there, would y'all believe this man had the balls to be giving bitches he meet Miranda house phone to call him at? Had bitches calling, leaving messages on Miranda machine, fam. This man don't have a place to live in, a pot to piss in, can't wipe his own ass good, but he have bitches calling Miranda house. Dog. No one could ever convince me that Steve has a shred of respect for Miranda. That man is a scallywag and a vagabond and a gutter sniper. Eventually he gets his broke ass out of Miranda's house and Miranda moves on with her life until bitch ass Carrie decides to try to get back together with Aiden. And because Aiden becomes best friends with Steve post he and Carrie's first breakup, Carrie badges Miranda into going on a double date with Steve and Aiden so Carrie could try to make a move on Aiden. And that was all the Steve needed to weasel his way back into Miranda's life. And this time, Miranda really is not going for Steve's trying to get back together shit. At this point, she's truly sure she can do better and that he is not the one for her. But then, this testicular cancer, and you know who he leans on? Miranda. Miranda was the only reason Steve gets a real doctor and the medical care he really needed to beat the disease. However, he still lost the ball as a result. And y'all already know, Steve masculinity already fragile. So when he starts woe is me into Miranda about how no gals go one ball brokey, Miranda decides to give him some pity pussy. And because the Sex and the City sexist gods hate Miranda and love Steve, she gets pregnant. City girls down, okay? And instead of getting the abortion she wanted and had every right to get, Charlotte York decides to shame her into having a baby she didn't want, tethering herself to a man she didn't want, all because Charlotte was so jealous and angry that she was struggling to get pregnant. She decided to make Miranda feel like getting an abortion would somehow be a slap in her face. Dog, Miranda needed entirely new and better friends. So Miranda decides to have the baby and that she and Steve should just co-parent because she doesn't want to be with him. Although, that ain't stopped Steve from calling himself proposing to Miranda with the ring Miranda helped Aiden pick out for Carrie, but Carrie didn't like. Yes, you are hearing me correctly. Steve strolled his ass down to a pregnant Miranda's door with a ring a man who actually gave a about his woman had gotten especially for her. Steve couldn't be bothered to do the same or to put in any effort to make Miranda feel special. So it really should come as no surprise that Miranda didn't want to settle for this even though she was having this baby. So she has the baby, and again, because the writers hate my bitch Miranda so deep, and women in general really, they had her reverse course and quietly fall in love with Steve, start dating fine-ass Blair Underwood, only to squander him to get her back together with Steve. Then Miranda and Steve get married, which is shown to hurt her career. And because Miranda is not allowed to have anything she truly wants, Steve's last act of the series is to muscle her into buying them a home in Brooklyn when she absolutely hates Brooklyn and loves Manhattan. The man done forced her to be a gentrifier, Lord. Miranda quite literally did everything Steve wanted and asked of her, all at the expense of her own dreams and happiness. And what's not taken into consideration by a lot of people is that it isn't just that Steve's not the traditional man of the house. He's not the traditional woman of the house either. Steve don't do shit. Everything falls on Miranda's shoulders. She doesn't just bear the brunt of the financial responsibility. She doesn't just have to mother Steve and their son. She ends up becoming a full-time caretaker to Steve's mother who has Alzheimer's. And in the Sex and the City movie, while Miranda is busy working her ass off at the firm and at home to care for their child, Steve and Steve's mother, Steve cheats on her.
Oh my God.
Steve cheated on her, then sat in her face, giving her a sob story about how he cheated because they hadn't had sex in months. And when Miranda rightfully leaves him, all her bitch ass friends judge her. They have all the sympathy for Steve. Let me tell y'all something. If there's nothing else Miranda should have cut all them bitches off for, it's how them trifling hoes did her for leaving a man who cheated on her. And let me be very clear. There are 1,000,001 reasons why couples may go through and will go through seasons where they're not having sex or not having sex as often as maybe they would like. Especially as we age and our bodies change, our hormones fluctuate and all kind of other shit. So if you think a man is justified in cheating on his wife because they haven't been having sex as often as he'd like, you neither understand nor appreciate the depth of marriage, commitment, love, intimacy, or trust, and I am sad for you. I am sad for you just like I was sad for Miranda, that she was made to feel by both her husband and her friends that she had an obligation to this man that somehow trumped every obligation he had to her, their marriage and their family. That's some painful shit. Steve literally left no stone unturned when it came to making Miranda feel inadequate as a woman, and we should have all hated him for that. But somehow the movie's moral was that Miranda was selfish and needed to learn how to forgive. They had that Steve gaslighting her like she hurt him so much by throwing away their marriage. So Miranda gets back together with Steve because Carrie weak-ass Bradshaw couldn't fathom having a backbone and not letting a man violate the commitment he made to you. Let me tell y'all something. I used to be a goofy bitch like the Sex and the City writers wanted me to be too, you know, which is why I was originally hot when Miranda left Steve in the reboot. But I can see clearly now the rain is gone. Steve, she should have left that 1,000 times. Hey everybody, quick little announcement. Your girl was nominated for a Webby Award, okay? They nominated me in social impact for all of my work on Illuminati and the Illuminativerse, and I would love it if you voted for me. I have the link in the description below, so if you could just drop what you're doing right quick and vote for your girl, I would appreciate that. Y'all should subscribe to the Patreon. I put, for the people who want to hear me doing all my cursing, we put the uncensored versions of every recap on the Patreon. So do that.